Hi YouTube, and welcome back to my channel, and welcome back to my countdown to my 50th birthday. So today I am going over when I was 43, which was mostly experienced in the year 2015. I finished off yesterday's video talking about getting into Dragon Age and fanfiction, and 2015 was where that really all took off. I think the first story I wrote, I'm pretty sure I wrote like sometime in December of 2014, but then in 2015, after I finished that story, all of these stories just started pouring out of me. I just checked my stats on Archive of Our Own, also known as AO3, where a lot of fanfiction. I actually got into AO3 in 2015, and I posted 270,000 enough stories to cover 270,000 words. That's how many words of fan fiction I wrote that year. And so I was very prolific that year. At this point, I think I'm writing somewhere between 20 and 40,000 words a year. I've really kind of slowed down on the fan fiction writing. I'm still writing fan fiction, but that year it was just like this glut of fan fiction. Mostly Dragon Age at that point, although Dave and I were getting into or were watching Teen Wolf, and so I know I had written a little bit of Teen Wolf already, and Merlin. Merlin was a big one. No, actually Teen Wolf I think was the next year. I might not have started that until later, but yeah, Dragon Age and Merlin I think were the two main ones I was writing in 2015. Mostly Dragon Age. And for anyone who has ever played the video games of Dragon Age, if you're interested in my ships, which, you know, no one's asked, but I'm telling you anyway, Zevran and Alistair from the first game. And before you say, well, Alistair's not gay, because we know Zevran is bisexual, because you can romance him as either gender, but Alistair is strictly female, for romance by females only in the game. However, it's fan fiction. It's my headcanon that Zevran is able to use his elven wiles and get into Alistair's bed if he wanted to. And I think they're adorable together. So there. With Dragon Age 2, there's, hardly any way to argue this because all the characters in Dragon Age 2 are romanceable by either gender. So, in that game, everyone's bisexual. And I ship Fenris and Anders, which I know a lot of people have problems with Anders. I love the guy, okay? I support his agenda, and I see nothing wrong with what he did. And you can call him terrorist until you're blue in the face. I love that character. And you can argue with me any which way you want to. I have heard every argument in the book. I still support his actions in the game. I do not end his life. And I do romance him. Well, I mean, in the game, I don't romance him with Fenris because you can't. But in my fan fiction, I romance him with Fenris. And I think there are some very reasonable scenarios because, yes, they hate each other. And yes, they bicker. But they bicker like a married couple. If the two of them have such similar backstories that if they would just talk to each other, they would get along. Anyway. And then for Dragon Age Inquisition, I very much love shipping Dorian with Cullen. Dorian with Bull is adorable as well, although I've written one threesome where it's Dorian and Bull and Inquisitor, a male Inquisitor. So I have done that, and I've done some rare pairs. I've done Dorian and Fenris. And I've done Dorian and Anders, because those two would definitely get along. And, I could go on about this for hours, but I won't, because I'm sure not all of you played Dragon Age. But anyway, so yes, me and Fanfiction became best friends in 2015 when I was 43. So that's kind of like the start of my career as a writer, was with that. And one of the YouTubers I used to follow, she's no longer active. She pops on every now and again, but Christina Horner, I love her content a lot, and she was very big into NaNoWriMo, which stands for National Novel Writing Month, which is done in December. In November, the goal is to write a 50,000 word novel within the 30 days of November. So you write 1,667 words or more every day, and you can achieve, writing a novel. And so, since I was so prolific with the fan fiction, I was like, I would like to try and write, because I wrote one story that year that was 87,000 words for just the one story. And so I was like, okay, if I can write a novel length fan fiction story, what's stopping me from writing an actual novel? And the only thing is, I was like, okay, I'm not going to force it, but if I get an idea, an original idea that is not a fan fiction idea, I'll go for it. And lo and behold, an idea did spark in me. I am a big fan also of a voracious reader, and I've read almost all of Terry Brooks' Shannara novels. And in my mind, one day I was speculating, like, gee, because if you look at his novels, and he's got elves and dwarves and everything else, but it's a post-apocalyptic world, and most of the creatures or the other races that are not considered human anymore were a result of the nuclear fallout from there was a nuclear war, or he doesn't specify, but I always assumed that it was either nuclear war or climate, some big disaster that happened that destroyed the world as we know it today. And certain humans, either due to radiation or some other factors, their bodies mutated and changed, and so we ended up with trolls, we ended up with dwarves, we ended up with gnomes. All of them originated as humans before this disaster, but due to the disaster, they evolved into these other forms and are considered separate races from humans. But then there's also the elves, and the elves are not an offshoot of humans. They go back from before humankind even existed, and they used magic to hide themselves so that humans wouldn't discover them in our day and age. But after the disaster happened, they were kind of forced out into the open, and a little thought in my brain came of, well, what if the elves, if they're not an offshoot of humans, what if they originated on a different planet? What if they were actually aliens from another planet that somehow crashed into ours, and over the millennia forgot their history, forgot that they were an advanced race from another planet, and became these beings of the Fae and all this stuff. This was a thought, and honestly could have become a fan fiction story for Shannara. But I was like, I could do something original with this idea. And that's where my first novel, that I still haven't published yet because I'm still rewriting it, came about. Dave actually helped me. He helped me with the title. Ended up calling it Artifact of the Dawn. There's actually a play on words with that, because literally my elven character in the book, his name is Arden, discovers what ultimately, it's old, so it's kind of an artifact, but it's also high tech. It's a high tech artifact, and it turns out to be this is spoilers for the book, but it's going to be so long until it's out that you'll forget it by the time then. But it's basically a key that unlocks a spaceship, and the spaceship's name in the original Elven language, it translates to the Dawn. So it's the artifact of the Dawn. But it's also, by discovering this artifact, it's the dawn of a new era for their people and for the humans on this world and everything else. And they're not on Earth. They're in a separate galaxy and everything, but the humans are Earth humans. There's a reason why they're on this world, but that's a spoiler for the second book. I've already mostly written the second book. But yeah, so for NaNoWriMo that year, I wrote that novel and have been editing and rewriting it since. And it's a process. And Dave was like, every time I finished a chapter, I'd send it off to him and he'd rate it, and he was so supportive. He loved everything, or at least at the very least, every response he gave. I don't know if he really loved it or not, but he seemed to love it, and he was giving me a lot of support behind it and everything, and so that was kind of cool and very encouraging, and he was very encouraging of my writing and stuff. So that made everything that year decent because there were other things that year that were problematic. The beginning of the year was great. That was the second semester that Dave was in college, got his master's degree, graduated with full honors. I think he was, I don't think they do magna cum laude for master's degrees, but he was like top of his class and straight A's. And then that summer, like when he graduated, and then it was kind of like, okay, now what do I do? He was trying to dive back into the development and finishing up things with his software program, and he kind of had a client that he was working with that, wanted, the data that his software could generate, and Dave had to do a lot of, like, he could run the software on it, but then he had to do a lot of manual stuff because the front end of the software wasn't ready. The back end was working fine, but he had to do a lot of kind of manual front end stuff to make it presentable for a client. And so he was doing a lot of that kind of thing for them. But then he had this crushing blow in later in the year. I want to say September of that year, where he had been trying to get, because he had to have certain certifications and like there's SEC regulations and all this stuff. I forget not FEMA. I forget the name of the organization, but he had been taking a little too long to complete his application for it. Mental health, I think, was a factor in this, but without warning, they deleted his account, and he would have had to start over from the beginning for the application process, and it was a long, tedious process, and he would have had to get retested on a couple. There were a lot of things where it was problematic, and he had, as far as I know, he had no warning. He might have gotten an email from them, I don't know. He didn't always look at them. He might have gotten a letter from them and threw it out without opening it. He did things like that frequently. And so by losing this, he just kind of threw his hands up and said, screw it, I'm not going to finish the software. Apologized to the client and refunded the money of the people who were investing in his software, because he'd gotten several investors to help him start his business, and he just gave the money back and he just gave up. And that's when things started to spiral out of control. So he had gone from this high of getting that master's and the fellowships and all these accolades to getting this kind of crushing blow, and then just everything spiraling out of control mental health wise for him the rest of the year. I know there were several times when I talked to his brother and I was like, can you help me with him because I don't know what else to do. And his brother, he and his brother were very close and stuff. So his brother would come by and they would talk and you know, I mean, it was a challenge because we've got had this dichotomy of him floundering in life while I was starting to thrive with my writing and my business was doing well. I had several subcontractors that I added to my business who were taking on additional projects and things for me, and so I was starting to try and ramp that up. I at the end of December, I landed a project with a company who wanted me to put together a training development program for Adobe Analytics for their system, so that I could, well, not Adobe specifically, no, but analytics in general. And they wanted me to do two different programs and things where I was participating in. And so all of these opportunities were happening for me, and he had lost this big opportunity, and just gave up. And I didn't know what to do. I know one of the things was that he really, really wanted me to continue with my success. So I was like, okay, honey, like, you know, I'll keep working on my stuff, you know, if that'll make you happy. And one thing he did do is he accepted a professorship, not adjunct. He was an adjunct professor in the College of Business where he graduated from. And so he started doing that, and that kind of helped a little bit, but it was a blow to his ego for the income, because it was literally 10% of what he used to earn at Intel. We were not hurting for money by any means. I mean, we had to tighten our belts a little bit. One thing he loved to do was go out to eat for dinner every night. It annoyed the heck out of me. I mean, I'm fine going out to dinner once in a while, but not every night. I like to cook. I like to stay home. If you look at my Instagram channel, you can see all the food that I cook and stuff, and I love cooking. And so that was a kind of a bone of contention between the two of us, and we kind of compromised, like, look, let's eat at home a little bit more often. He wanted more variety than I was able to provide with my own cooking. I had a rather limited repertoire at the time. I loved to cook, but I just didn't, you know, I'd have to look up recipes and things and stuff, and I would always ask, like, you know, what are you in the mood for? And I would, you know, I could certainly do that, but he often floundered, like, oh, I don't know, you know, and it's all that kind of stuff. We ended up starting to use a meal service, a meal kit service called Sunbasket. That added some variety into our diet, and it was something like, I can cook, because they send you the recipe and the ingredients and everything. And so the two of us would go through, they had like 15 or 20 options every week that you could choose from. And I'm actually still with the service now, and they have even more. They've really expanded their options and everything. But we would go through and, like, you know, like, I would let him choose most of the time, because I'll eat anything. I'm pretty flexible, and I'll cook anything if necessary. But they had really nice recipes and fresh food that they would send and everything else. And so it was a nice compromise. About 3 times a week we would eat at home, and it saved a bit of money, because it was, you know, I think at the time it was like $9 a serving, whereas we were spending $30 or $40. So 15, 20, you know, not even counting drinks. So we'd often spend 60 or 70 sometimes on dinner every night. And this, you know, like, that was not a sustainable thing. And you know, the fact that he had to stay home and eat, it bugged him as well. Even though I liked it, it was good for me, but what was good for me didn't necessarily work for him, or his mental health issues and stuff. And so, that was a challenging year. And for any one of you who's been following me for a long time, you kind of probably are seeing where this is going and what tomorrow's video is going to be about. But I will just end it there, because let's not end it prematurely. on that note, if you are enjoying these stories, like, comment, if you're not subscribed, I like to blabber into the camera. If you enjoy it, follow me for more content, and check out all my links below too. I've got some published books on Amazon. I write for Medium. I do a lot of LGBTQ plus articles and things. So if you want to check out some of my writing and stuff, I got my link to AO3 down there as well. Warning, I do have some dark content. My writing's gotten a lot darker in the last few years for a variety of reasons. So, pay attention to the tags if you're going to look at any of it. But until tomorrow, take care.